Informatio here. Welcome to another Battle of the Debuts, where we put two debut albums up to find out which band had the better start of their career. Now today we're going to look at two bands that have been sort of linked together in that one is the sort of American version of the British version. So it's America versus Great Britain today, and representing the United Kingdom is Deep Purple, and representing America is Vanilla Fudge. Very similar. That's what sort of things were on their debut albums. Very similar sort of sound in places. One went on to change their sound from when they started to become one of the biggest rock bands on the planet Earth. Another band that sort of had a brief success, but they are together again. Well, three of their four original members are. So, first of the bands to release something, these two, was Vanilla Fudge. Now, Vanilla Fudge, an American rock band known for their slow, extended, heavy rock arrangements of hits. The original band's lineup was vocalist and organist Mark Stein, bassist and vocalist Tim Bogart, lead guitarist and vocalist Vince Martell, and of course the one and only Carmine Appice. They recorded 5 albums, disbanded in '70, got back together in 2022. And they're one of the few American bands linked between psychedelia and what became heavy metal, and they are cited as being like the American version of Deep Purple at the time. So their self-titled debut album, Vanilla Fudge, came out in the summer of 1967, and it consists entirely of half-speed covers and 3 short original compositions. So on here we have got Carmine Appice on the drums and vocals, Tim Bogart on the bass, Vince Martell on guitars, Mark Stein lead vocals and keyboards, and the producer was Shadow Morton. First track on here is a slowed down version of Ticket to Ride from Beatles, of course. I've got mixed feelings about this. I love the Hammond organ on it. It really is good, and Carmine's drumming is just brilliant. But I just think it's too slow. Come on, get on with it. I just really didn't get that at all. And then we get People Get Ready, Curtis Mayfield track, of course. I actually like this. I think this is a better version. It's got a bit moody. That Hammond organ's great on it. I do like that track. Then there's a version of the Zombies, She's Not There. Now this one isn't too bad. I think it's not a bad version, but I prefer the Zombies. But I think this is a really good interpretation of this song, and I like how they've toned it down. It really is good. It's a good song. Then we get Bang Bang by Sonny Bono. Now I like both versions of this. I like the version that he did, the original, but I like this one because of Mark Stein's Hammond organ. Gore. That deep, rich stuff. It's a great song. It really is good. Then we get one of their originals, and it's only 20 seconds. It's called Illusions of My Childhood Part 1. There's a little bit of Carmine's drumming. Nothing wrong with that. You Keep Me Hanging On. Classic Motown song. They've seemed to make a 4-minute song last 7 minutes. It just doesn't work for me. Then we get Illusions of My My Childhood Part 2, 23 seconds of Mark Stein on the organ. Then they do a track called Take Me For A Little While. It's their own track. I think this is really good, very psychedelic, some great playing on this. The Carmine's drumming is fantastic. I love this track. It's a shame there's not more of this sort of thing of their own, quite honest, on this album. Then we get Illusions of My Childhood Part 3, 2 seconds. Should have been longer. You had a potentials here of a really good song. Then they do a terrible version of Eleanor Rigby. They've made this go out into 8 minutes, and certainly about 5 minutes far too long. Why mend something that isn't broken? That was the last track on there. Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag on this album. I do like their own track on here. I think it's a great track. Some of the covers are hit and miss to me, to be quite honest. When it comes to listening to Vanilla Fudge albums, this is one that I don't tend to go for. Of course, they did make better albums, I think, as time went on. But that's what I think. The critics, or All Music's Paul Collins, said that gave Vanilla Fudge 4 out of 5 stars. He stated nobody could accuse Vanilla Fudge of bad taste in their repertoire, and that most of the tracks share a common structure of disjointed warm-up jam, a Hammond-heavy dirge of harmonised vocals at the centre, and then a final flat-out jam. However, he said each song still works as a time capsule of America's psychedelia. Well, there's not much written about it. This was Vanilla Fudge's most successful album. I think that some of their other ones were far better. This got to number 6 on the Billboard and number 8 in Finland. So let's have a look at the nuts and bolts of this one. Song quality. The songs are good. Of course they are. They're great songs. Some worked, some didn't. But their own song is fantastic. I really like that. But for the playing, it's great playing, even though I don't particularly like some of the interpretations. But I'm still going to give it a 4 out of 5 because of the excellent playing. Production, yeah, not too bad production. 1967. Sounds a little bit dated now, but I can live with that. So I'm going to give that a 3 out of 5. Reception. I'm still bemused how come this is their most successful album. I just don't get it, personally. I mean, there's lots of you out there that will probably think I'm talking a load of old rubbish, but there you go. Who am I to judge? But number 6 on the Billboard charts in America. So I'm going to have to give it a 4 out of 5. Cover design. Well, it says who they are. It's colourful. Yeah, bit psychedelic is what they are. So I shall give that a 3 out of 5. So for Vanilla Fudge gives us a grand total of 14 out of 20. So let's see what the UK contender can do. So Deep Purple. Well, we don't have to go into too much detail about Deep Purple. I think we've covered them enough on this channel over the last year or so. My favourite rock band, one of my favourite rock bands. All I say, it started off when they started off. They had this weird idea from Searchers drummer Chris Curtis, who had this idea of a roundabout, that there'd be a core of himself, John Lord and Richie Blackmore, and then people would get on and off this roundabout. Chris Curtis disappeared though, become a taxman, I believe. So Richie and John decided to carry on, and they brought in Pacey, brought in a singer, Rod Evans, and Nick Simpler on the bass, and made an album. And the album was Shades of Deep Purple, that debuted in the Europe and UK in July of '68, and in the United States in September '68. So on the album we have got Rod Evans lead vocals, Mr. Richie Blackmore on guitars, John Lord on the organ and backing vocals. Don't see that very often. Nick Simper on the bass, Ian Pace on the drums, and producer was Derek Lawrence. First track on here is an instrumental called And the Address. This is sort of dominated by John Lord's great keyboards and the virtuoso of Mr. Richie Blackmore. Sorry. Great track. I like that, even though it's very early. You can see where they were going to go. Then, of course, they have that big hit in America, a version of Joe South's Hush. I quite like this. They redone it with Ian Gill in the 80s, and it just didn't have a patch on this. This is good. It's that Hammond organ for Mr. Lord that really dominates that track. One More Rainy Day. The only decent thing on here is John Lord. Not a great lover of that one. Then we get Prelude, which is Happiness, I'm So Glad. A bit of a cover, of course. I'm So Glad, made really famous by Cream. It's not too bad. It's not a bad cover of the Cream song. And as ever, John's keyboards are just wizardry on it. Then we get one of my favourite tracks. It still remains a great track for me. The Mandrake Root. Love the live version on that in concert album. Great riffs from Richie on this. The keyboards are solid from John. Ian Pace doing the business. It's a great track. Then they do a Beatles song, just like Vanilla Fudge did, and guess what? It's not very good. I hate it. Then we get Love Help Me. It's alright. Bit poppy for me, bit wishy-washy. And then they do a really good version of Hey Joe. It sounds a little bit like a White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, but I think it's not a bad version. Okay, what do I think of it? Well, it's not a bad album. It's very poppy, and when you listen to it, you knew that Rod Evans was not going to last very long. By the sort of some of the guitar work from Richie even then, and from John Lord and Ian Pace, they wanted a more heavier sort of thing. But there are some good tracks on here. I mean, the highlight is Mandrake Root. So I do play it now and again. But it's not one of the Deep Purple albums that I grab every time I listen to some Deep Purple. So that's what I thought of it. So what did the critics? Well, here in Blighty, no one liked it. Despite being presented as a polished commercial group in their radio appearances, they didn't do well. But in America, they loved it. People were saying that they were a poor man's Vanilla Fudge, and Brian Connolly of Sweet recalled they were so out of place. You really felt sorry for them. But in America they loved them because, you know, they were called the English Vanilla Fudge. They had massive radio coverage. They were treated like stars. But there's no many reviews about this album. But, you know, over the years we've got AllMusic gave it 4 stars. Pop Matters gave it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's so many. They do a real one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 stars. Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal, 6 out of 10. Charts. Canada, number 19, number 24 on the Billboard. So let's have a look at the nuts and bolts of this one. Song quality. Some great songs on here. Mandrake Root, of course, and The Address. Apart from Help, Joe South's Hush is great. All-time sort of classic from Deep Purple. So I am going to give song quality a 4 and a 5. Production. Well produced album, actually. Very clean and layered, and although the Brits didn't appeal to it, the Americans loved it. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Reception. Didn't do too well over here, but in America it really went a storm. Okay, only got to 24 in the Billboard charts, but Hush was a huge successful single. They were on American TV a lot, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. And cover design, yeah, shades of purple, purple background, and a really freaky picture of the band in the day. Some of the hairdos a bit bizarre. Richie Blackmore's for a starter, and Ian Pace is a little bit freaky, but yeah, it says what it is, and I think that's why it's probably sold well in America, because it's got a great picture. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. So all the 4s today for Deep Purple, Shades of Deep Purple, gives us a total of 16. Okay then, it did go very well the way of Deep Purple today. Okay, both have similarities with what's on their albums. Few covers, different interpretations, but I think Deep Purple executed it a lot better, although people in this country didn't think so. There's more original songs. I mean, it's got a classic, Mandrake Root, which is brilliant. So I'm going to give this to Deep Purple today. It wasn't the most successful debut album over here in the UK. It wasn't until in rock when they really hit the money, but to start your career and have a good early career in America is pretty good for a British band. I think Shades Deep Purple is far better, and it's very underrated. It has got some classics on it. So there's your winner today, Deep Purple's Shades of Deep Purple. But you may have a different opinion. You know how you do this now. We've been doing this a little while now. Put your comment in here or in your comments box, or go to the poll on the community page. Or there's also sort of little polls that you can put on the other social media that I'm on as well. So there we go. Interesting to see who wins this one. Okay, I'll be back later, and it's picks and mix day, and today's a trip down memory lane, which means we shall be looking at the top 10 singles of 62 years ago, on the 26th of January 1961. So join me for that later. Bye for now.